Today we're at Oulton Park with our Cayman GT4 and we're going to be installing our top mounts and rear tow arms and testing the difference that those components make to the chassis. Last time we were with the car, we were at Anglesey Circuit with Chris Dymond at the wheel, and we were testing the difference between the standard car with the standard suspension settings and the standard car with our fast road settings applied to the car. So what we saw there was reduced understeer, increased grip, and we also improved the tyre wear across the compound around the circuit. So we saw some really nice improvements. We've now reached the limit of the standard suspension adjustment, so we've maxed everything out on the car that we can get as standard. So it's now time to start installing some components to take it to the next level. We've come down to Oulton Park today to do exactly that. So before we start fitting the parts, we need to head out as usual and we need to get base data for the new circuit. So the car is currently as it left Anglesey, but because we're at a new track with different tyres, we need to go out and we need to set that baseline as it is right now before we start making any upgrades so we can overlay that data. We have the VBOX Video HD2 kit installed still with the infrared tyre temperature sensors so we can see exactly how the car is behaving and particularly how the camber and the tyre is working around the circuit on a corner by corner basis. So we can overlay the data after we've fitted the components to see how those have made a difference in terms of grip and temperature distribution, and then we can see how much better the car is towards the end of the day. So once again we've got Chris Dymond at the wheel, the pro racing driver with a lot of experience in the Porsche chassis, and we've got the car as we left it at the end of Anglesey, so that is with our setup on there as maximum as possible in terms of cambers, with the standard suspension still on the car. So we're in a much better position starting today at Oulton than we were when we started the day at Anglesey. So heading out already, we can see that the outer edges are still getting hot, but the distribution is much better than we had at the beginning of Anglesey. We're not just cooking just the outside edge. So just keep an eye on that front right through here. We can see it's nice temp spread, just keeping the heat towards the mid to outer section of the tyre, and then into a nice high G corner here. So again there, you can see the outer edge of the front left really getting quite hot again. So that shows that we do still have room for improvement in terms of getting that tyre working at its most optimum through the corners. Quite a nice quick chicane section here, so we'll watch how that lows, and again the front left just cooking on the outside edge, but again we've got really nice temp spread past middle now on the tyre, so we really only got the inner quarter of the tyre that needs attention, I'd say, through the corners, but 3/4 of that tyre with the setup on the car is now working quite well. Similar shown through there, through the front right on that tight corner there. You've just got that temp spread building in towards the inside edge of the tyre, but we still have a strip of about 1/4 that we need to engage. The rear tyres, again, we've got a much nicer temp spread. We're not leaving the outsides completely cold because we've not got too much understeer dialed in at the minute. We've got a little bit on the limit, but nowhere near as much as when the car was totally standard. So yeah, plenty of room for improvement around this lap. But again, a nice platform to start from this time. We're not starting from somewhere with a lot of work to do. Instead, we're starting from somewhere with some really nice refinements to make, just to get the most out of the chassis, but we're not starting from a place with a load of issues. We've got a nice balanced chassis below us now with room for improvement. Chris, you've just come back in now from that initial base run, so how was it compared to obviously as we left Anglesey?
Yeah, pretty similar. We've got a bit better track condition today, so it's actually exaggerated that front end. So I'm really feeling like I can't commit fully because the back is just not in the balance with the front. So particularly through the fast kink, so going down the hill and then coming back up the hill, I can't commit to full throttle through there because the back just doesn't feel as gripped up as the front.
Sure, so you're leaning back off the camber again.
Yeah, I want more angle on that right rear or left rear as I'm coming down the hill. Or the whole rear axle, I want more angle on that wheel so it supports it as I'm trying to turn and carry the speed through. In the low speeds, feels good, it's pretty balanced, but again, I'm just waiting for the throttle a little bit. Okay. So do I want, if we bring the back up, do we go a little bit more on the front as well? Sure. It's really, that rear limited at the moment. Okay, traction's good. It's just the high speed loading that it just isn't where the front is and can't quite have the bravery to do it.
All right, so we're very similar to how we left Anglesey then, really.
It's really close. Just I think it's more just the new surface here and the better conditions.
The tarmac here, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, mega. So yeah, at Anglesey, obviously we've maxed out as much camera as we can get with that
toe arm on there because we can't get any more, otherwise we'll impede on toe settings. Yeah, we'll take a look at the bits we're going to fit then. So we're going to install some parts front and rear to address those issues, and hopefully when we fitted those we should see a completely different machine. So we've had a good look through the data, and we can see based on that we do still need a little bit more front camber. So as standard now with the setup on there, we have maxed out the standard components and we've got that set into maximum camber, but it's still not quite enough. We can see on the data that we're actually only using about a half of the tyre now through the corner, so better than a quarter that we were using through the corners before, but now we've got it to about a half. So to get that even further and closer to a full tyre, we need to install our top mounts. So these top mounts we have machined and designed to have more camber and more caster in them based on the difference in positioning of that hole there. So this means that when these are fitted, we can get even more camber on the front axle and more caster. So that means we can get more dynamic camber gain. So caster basically means that as we're turning the steering wheel, it'll increase the camber as the wheel is turned on the outside wheel, giving more camber again through the corner. So after these are fitted and set up, we should see a more even tyre temperature distribution across the full width of that tyre through the corners. Now we're going to move to the back and show you the part we're going to be fitting back there to address what Chris would like addressing based on his driver feedback. So based on Chris's feedback, we want to increase the rear camber at the rear axle on the Cayman. So at the back, we are quite limited in doing that due to the rear toe arm. So although this doesn't directly affect the camber, it stops us increasing camber further than it is right now. That's because although this is a fixed arm, it does have an adjuster in the subframe for some toe adjustment, but not enough range so we can get more camber on the rear of the car. So what we're going to do is we're going to install one of our adjustable rear toe arms. So with this fitted to the car, we can maximise the potential of the rear camber adjustment, set the camber exactly where we want it, and then we're no longer limited by toe adjustment to get the toe in on the chassis again. So with this arm installed, we can get more camber on the rear axle, increase that mid-corner bite for Chris at the rear, and then we can get the toe setting back to exactly where we want it, so there's zero compromise on rear toe and camber settings. So we're going to get these fitted up to the car now, get the car set up again, and get Chris back out and overlay that data.
So on the left hand side of the screen, we've got the before video, and on the right hand side, we've got after the parts were fitted with the additional camber. Both of these laps are quite early in each data set because they were our cleanest laps from each session. So as a general track day, you've got a lot of traffic out on track. So this was the 2 laps that we could overlay corner by corner, and they were relatively close together, so we could show you guys how those tyres were reacting through each of the corners. So as we approach this fast left here, you'll see that the front right overheats a little bit more on the tyre with the lesser camber, just broaching into the red there through that corner. But then as we come into this really high G tight corner here, you'll see that as we go through that corner, the outside edge of that front left is really loading up on the tyre. So we're pulling about 1.4 G here on the left screen, but with the additional camber, we're actually pulling 1.47 G on this point, and we're 2 mile an hour up just coming past the apex here. So not only have we got an overheating tyre on the front left, as we're really loading that chassis up with a lot of G-force, we're rolling and tipping that chassis over to use as much tyre as possible. But we're just starting to lift up that inside edge as we're just limited on how much grip is available. But with the additional camber on that front axle, you can see we've got a much more even spread across the entire width on the front left, and we're not overheating big red strips like we are before the parts were added. So we've still got some little bits of red in there, but it's nowhere near as severe as before, which means that we can really carry that through. And if you look at Chris's hand position on that steering wheel as well, you'll see that before the parts were fitted, he's wound a lot more lock-in to compensate as the front's just starting to understeer, where he's got a much more shallow angle on steering wheel once the parts were fitted, because we've really turned that in now. We've lent onto the tyre, we've hooked up that nose, and we're following a nice clean arc pattern through the corner, whereas before he was just down in understeering. That's why he was scrubbing off that speed, and that's where that 2 mile an hour's come from, and that's why we're 0.7 of a G down in that corner, because he's just scrubbing the nose off a little bit, whereas with the camber plates fitted, he's actually been able to lean onto that camber, use all of the tyre, and hook the car in, and use the grip to get the car through the corner with a lot more pace. So we'll continue on to the lap here as we watch. So again, that latent heat takes a little bit longer to bleed out of the tyre on the car with less camber, because we're just cooking that compound. So into a nice fast chicane section here, and again you can see that front left just overheating a little bit more, whereas with the camber added, we're just broaching into yellows, but again the full width of that front tyre is now being used to the full effect. So much more stability and a lot more grip from that front axle. Really nice fast tight right here. Again, really nice temperature distribution all the way through that tyre, and the front right there you just saw flash into the red. Again, front left there, getting into the red on the before setup. With the after setup, we're getting just greens, yellows, and we're using all the way to that inside shoulder now through the corners, which means we've got a lot more traction levels available to us. So we come around this top section here. This is very fast with Druids, and again, we're scrubbing speed. So front left there, you can see we're just getting a little bit more red on the outside. It's just going to a thicker block, whereas the front left on the after, we've still got some red, but you can see that it's a lot thinner on the strip. So we're actually spreading that heat further in as we approach the exit of the corner. And again, down the straight, it bleeds the heat out of it a lot faster back to a workable compound. We're not keeping that heat in the tyre for too long. So again, we're doing incremental changes here, so we're not getting massive difference like we were before, but it's enough that we're getting a lot more grip, and we're altering the balance of the chassis now. So we're not only getting better tyre temperature distribution, but we're getting a better chassis balance, as Chris asked for.
All right, straight back in. How was it?
That's a different beast. Wow. That's
Giving you what you want now.
very close.
Nice. Okay,
Very
cool.
close. You can really feel the lateral through Druids and Cascades.
Nice.
So
Is it carrying the back more now as well?
Yeah, the front is in line with the back, and it's all arcing nicely. I want more, but I'm greedy.
Okay.
And actually, I want a harness because I'm really feel the lateral knocking me across the seat.
Yeah, we do need harnesses.
A few times I was like, come on, turn, and I couldn't turn enough to go with it, and I was like, yeah, the balance is very, very good.
Yeah.
As it gets hotter, it does shift rearward slightly again.
Okay.
And I've particularly found that traction was just coming a little bit of an issue, and actually braking was just like getting a bit more ABS as it gets hotter and hotter. But I've just done what, 25 minutes, like
you were out there for a while.
22 minutes, pushing hard, and it was coping wonderfully, and it just started shifting rearwards that last 1 or 2 laps.
Okay.
But yeah, big step.
Nice, awesome, that's good news. So I remember you said before, like the front, you were getting quite a lot of wash still, even though it was better, it was still pushing quite a bit. What was that? Was that better with the extra camber?
Only went away when it got hot, but yeah, initially, bang, straight off the bat, I could really feel I have the confidence to turn, and that was as much the front as the rear.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit more on the front than the back, because I could deal with it moving in the way I wanted to, because I had the confidence in the front.
Sure.
And I could just tuck it in, and particularly when I was getting on the power on exit, particularly over the crest out of the last corner, I wasn't chasing the front, I was more chasing just a little bit of power oversteer coming out. And again, only really when the tyres got very hot at those last couple of laps.
Okay, so do you think there's any areas that we're sort of lacking in now that we could improve on next?
So the one thing I can is on quick changes of direction, and particularly in the island corner out the back, she does feel like she's just rolling over a little bit too much now. So that extra load through the tyre and that grip is just now pushing the body down. And it's okay, but I'm working hard, particularly at the second chicane, from right, left, and then back again. To really, I feel like I'm putting in just a bit too much steering to catch up for the body.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's completely expected, because now we're getting the tyre working exactly as it should. We're using all that tyre now, so we've increased grip levels massively.
Yeah, I can feel it.
So
my
forces, so the force on the chassis now has increased massively. So we're physically grabbing the chassis now and twisting it harder, and the springs are now not really stiff enough to cope with that. So yeah, that is expected. So the next stage for this car, and actually the next video, we're going to be addressing that anyway. So it's actually good that that's now finally come into the car.
Yeah, again, with I think the new tarmac here, and particularly the way the camber is on some of these corners, it's really showing that up now. Whereas at Anglesey we didn't have quite a long enough corner to do it. Here we do, and it's showing it up much more.
Because before you get that camber into the chassis, there's never enough grip because you're always understeering or oversteering.
Yeah, it's just scrubbing the front.
Exactly.
So, it's not
so the chassis is not actually doing its job. Whereas when you get that right, it absolutely flies. Yeah.
I can feel it.
Nice. We've had a great day testing at Oulton today with Chris at the wheel. We've got some really nice data from the car. We can see that the temperature spread now is really nice and even across the whole of the tyre. So we're getting maximum grip from these tyres. We've got the camber front and rear really nailed, and that's looking at the data with the temperature spread as well as the feedback from Chris on how that car is now balanced and how it turns and rotates through the corners. We've really got a nice setup on the car. So now we've got the camber perfect, we need to address the new issue, which is the car now feels quite soft. Because we're maximising the grip from the tyre compound, we're now twisting that chassis inside the platform a lot more than before, and it now makes the springs feel very soft. So that's the next step. So we're going to head over to Silverstone next, and we're going to address that issue alongside some other upgrades, and we're going to get some base laps in as the car is right now before we do any of that, and then we're going to overlay the difference for you once again.